Hey, welcome to another episode of After the Buzzer Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, coming today. I have my guys with me as usual. First, I'm going to introduce Mr. Basketball, the Hall of Famer, Mr. Marvin Owens. What's happening, Marv?
What's going on,
And,
guys? What's going on?
And our road dog, Mr. Chris Sawyer, a sports information director for Regent University. What's happening, Chris?
What's up, guys? Good morning.
Hey, we got some hot topics today, man. We're going to recap the Super Bowl. I want to ask the question with the loss by San Francisco. What is it as far as Kyle Shanahan's legacy? Got a question, especially I want to hear from Marv about Eric Bieniemy. Is he the Mark Jackson of the NBA for the NFL, the way he's being treated and not getting the job? Want to talk about the first pick in the NFL draft. What should Chicago do? The scoring in the NBA, I mean, people are scoring 60, 70 points randomly all throughout the year. Every team seems to have a 60, 70-point score. What does that mean for the NBA? Is it too much? And then the last one we want to jump into, this week, Orlando retired Shaquille O'Neal's jersey. Is it good? Is it great? Should he been retired? We're going to jump into all of that today, man. So let's just get started. Super Bowl 58. I was out in Las Vegas. Las Vegas was a great host of the Super Bowl. It was jumping. It was popping. A bit too cold for me. You know, I'm one of those guys from the African continent, but it's all good. I'm going to jump right into it with you, Chris, man. Tell me, what are your thoughts on the Super Bowl, man? Give me a recap. Your thoughts on the game, the outcome, and tell us, what do you think, who won it, who lost it, and everything all Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm going to, normally I'll throw a couple stats out there, but I'm going to talk about, just as a casual observer of two teams I really don't care about, but I definitely, love watching the Super Bowl. So I sat and I watched it with my boys, and anyone that knows me, they don't like sports, but they were really into it. San Francisco at first was putting a lot of pressure on Mahomes, and I thought they were starting to control the game. But guys, let's be honest. I mean, big players step up at big times. I mean, Mahomes finished with 333 yards, I think 2 touchdowns. He also, if I'm correct, he was the leading rusher on the team. But the big thing for me was overtime. He was 8 for 8, I believe, for 42 yards. They had a critical 4th down conversion. I think that really made the game. Once it went to overtime, I got a little nervous. But then, I don't know if you guys heard this, but some of the 49er players were saying they didn't understand the rules of the new overtime, which I think is unacceptable. There's got to be somebody in that organization that lets everybody know what's going on. Again, that's something I read. I don't know if that's true. But I will say Mahomes stepped up. Again, not a big fan, just because I'm not a Kansas City fan. But, I mean, he's done. I mean, now they're talking, oh, will he be the GOAT and catch Brady one day? He's so young. But it was very entertaining. Great overtime game. Great win for the Chiefs. Kelsey, I think one of the things that's gotten overshadowed by the win, and you guys may talk about this, is what you thought of Kelsey's actions on the sideline to his coach. At that time they were losing. And so I think it would have been a different maybe talked about differently if they had lost. But I would like to get your opinion on that as you guys talk through the game.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, different strokes for different folks. I mean, did Kelsey earn the right, Marv, to grab his coach and bump him during the game, or do you feel like that was a bit over the top? I know he had only had one catch to that time for like 1 yard, so he was real hyped and very intense. I don't know if grabbing your coach and putting hands on him and bumping him is a thing to do. I think certain coaches would have acted much differently. Big shout out to Andy Reid for the way he handled it. But Mark, what are your thoughts about the Super Bowl, Kansas City's win, and how San Francisco ultimately played in the game?
Yeah, the Kelsey interaction with Reid on the sideline didn't really bother me that much. That's who Kelsey is. That's who Andy Reid is. Much ado about nothing. They two veterans. They've been around this game for a long time. People wanted to make it a headline, but I didn't really care. So honestly, in watching the game, as just a fan of someone who really didn't care who won either way, I thought San Francisco controlled the football game. I think Mahomes does what Mahomes does, and I think we all expected that at some point for him to do that. But we can't sit here and watch this football game and act like the Niners didn't outplay the Chiefs for the majority of this football game and control it. But if we're talking about MVPs, I know they had to give it to Mahomes just because of his heroics and what he did to, finally make the pass to Hardman to win the game. But Spagnuolo was the MVP of this game. Let's be real. That defense and Spags calling the defensive game, the game plan. The Niners controlled most of the game, and San Francisco was held in check really by Kansas City's defense until Mahomes could kind of find his rhythm and do the things that we all expected him to do. But there was a chance and a time for San Francisco to really put some distance between them, and they weren't really able to. And we all know that football, basketball, whatever sport we want to talk about comes down to about 2 or 3 plays, right? It always does when you have two teams that are evenly matched. And the first one to me was in that fourth quarter, right? And I think it was about 2 minutes to go. It was like a 3rd and 5. And San Francisco had the ball with an opportunity to do some things. And Shanahan actually called it right. He knew Spags was going to blitz, and he blitzed McDuffie off of that edge. I don't know if you guys remember this play or not, but McDuffie lined up against Ayuk, and he blitzed him off of the edge, and he kept Kittle in for 6-man protection, but on the wrong side. And Spags played chess with him. And McDuffie came in, knocked the pass down because he got in the throwing lane of Purdy, and that was a big play in this game. And I think he leads the NFL right now. McDuffie led the NFL in uncontested blitzes with knockdown pass. I think he had like 16 or so. So that was a real big play that nobody really kind of talked about. And then I think the second one was the fact that the Chiefs blitzed on 51% of the plays in the Super Bowl, and we talked about that last week about pushing the pocket on Purdy, making him uncomfortable. And that's all the Spag, 51% of plays that you blitzing and trying to push the pocket, that's a lot. So I think it was like the 4th highest since he's been a Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator. So that was a big part of this game. And then, of course, that 3rd and 5 in overtime where he blitzed again, and he went in a cover 0, which is really unheard of with Spags and at the goal line. But Purdy actually read it. They had Jennings open, but once again, they couldn't protect. Chris Jones pushed the pocket and made Mahomes kind of throw the ball off to the side and missed Ayuk, who was really wide open. But again, the inability for them to control Kansas City's defensive line when it mattered the most and to kind of cover those blitzes that Spags did was the difference in this game. So I know Mahomes is great, and he did what we expected him to do, but I can't watch that game and say that they were, phenomenally better than San Francisco, because they just weren't. But you have quarterbacks that make a lot of money and make plays when they're supposed to make plays. But Kansas City defense won this football game to me.
And Lee, Marv makes a great point, because I think I wasn't on the show last week, but the week before we also talked about one of Purdy's great stats was getting out, as he gets out of the pocket, being able to make plays. But as Marv just said, the defense of Kansas City was excellent at kind of pressuring him enough where he couldn't get those things done like he wanted to do. So I think that was a difference at some point.
And before you go, Lee, that was the difference on both sides. Both sides did an excellent job all night of pushing the pocket and keeping them within the pocket. They didn't let Mahomes get outside of that pocket. Bosa did an excellent job. But the 2 most critical plays that he made, Bosa reverted back to who he's always been as a pass rusher, and Andy Reid kind of played to that and got those 2 big first downs with Mahomes running the football. But they did an excellent job of pushing the pocket and keeping him in the pocket all the way through the fourth quarter, to be quite honest. Both teams did an excellent job at that.
Yeah, you're talking about the play where Mahomes got the first down when he dipped inside instead of staying upfield.
Yep.
It definitely cost them. But, my take on it is this. Look, San Francisco was the better team. I mean, they were the better team coming into the game. They played like it in the first half. They played like it for the majority of the game. The problem was they dominated the first half, they didn't score any points. I mean, San Francisco should have been legitimately up 17 or 21 points. They dominated the first half, and yet they didn't have but 10 points going into the halftime, and that was critical for the game. And then when you look at the beginning of the second half, they came out and immediately got an interception and still didn't go down and put points on the board. Those were defining moments. You look at the third quarter in itself. Kansas City was still struggling to move the football, but San Francisco had 3 straight 3-and-outs to begin the third quarter with an interception in Kansas City's field of play. To me, that's where the game was lost. You look at Purdy doing the third quarter. The first 3 drives, he was 2 for 7 for -2 yards. And while you've dominated the game, you're not putting any points on the board. I think that was the reason that they didn't finish the game. They didn't capitalize on. Of course, they made some blunders in the special teams. The fumble was huge. It changed momentum. The mixed extra point literally put the score back on target. But to me, it was Purdy being Purdy. We talked about Brock Purdy last week, and a lot of people are giving him a lot of shine for how he played in the Super Bowl. But the key for me is Brock Purdy only throws the ball in the middle of the field, Marv. He's a middle of the field
Whoa. Now we had this conversation last week about whether he was a game manager or not. Brock Purdy was the best player on the field. He was the best player on the field for San Francisco.
Who was better? That's ridiculous, Marv. That's ridiculous.
Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuels can't get open.
Look.
Now we love Debo as a utility player. He can't get open. They had no vertical routes because he can't get open, and they was playing against the 2 best corners in the NFL. Nobody passed the ball against them.
Marv, they lost the game by not running McCaffrey.
McCaffrey averaged under 3 yards a carry, Lee. But you want to run up against a brick wall when they blitz 51% of the time? You can't run against that.
I got to help you here. It's not the yards per carry. It's the amount of carries, Marv. San Francisco is a play-action team. That's how they move the ball. They play action.
Play action is not effective if you can't run the football off of it.
I can
play action you all day, but if I'm not worried that you can't gash me with the run game, I don't care what you play actioning.
Remember, Marv, San Francisco has to stay on task and moving the sticks. Run the football. Run McCaffrey. The 3 drives I'm talking about at the beginning of the third quarter, they did not run the football. They didn't set the stage for what they've been all year long, which is a running team, play action, and let Purdy throw the ball down the field. That was the issue.
Maybe
run McCaffrey. You're the one that football game.
Hey, maybe there's a narrative here. Right? Maybe as we looked at the AFC Championship game and we had the same questions about Baltimore, maybe Kansas City is pretty good. Maybe they're pretty good at stopping the run, and offensive coaches who get paid to make offensive play calls in this league said we cannot effectively run the football against Kansas City. Nobody has. Nobody's run it effectively. All year, Lee. So you telling me that I'm gonna play action when I'm not running the ball effectively? Play action allows you to get players open, but if I'm not running it well, what am I play actioning?
You continue to run the football and stay on task. The problem is, and to your point, Marv, I think you're making my argument for me. I appreciate you doing this. Both teams lost because they didn't run the football, Chris. If they had ran the football, they would. Again, San Francisco is a run-first team. You guys are thinking Purdy was. There's no way.
People say Chris, let me ask you both this. How many touches did McCaffrey have in the Super Bowl?
Oh, he had some good touches.
No, how many?
I don't know exactly how many touches
he had. Over 35 touches in that football game.
It doesn't matter. They should have ran the football more.
But Lee, if I've got 35, it's just like a basketball player. If I score 30, but I had to take 35 shots to get my 30, is that effective? Is that effective for basketball?
If you win the game, it's definitely effective.
That's not the argument I make. The point is that it's not efficient. It's not effective. And you just said San Francisco is a play action efficient offense.
Yes.
I gave the ball to McCaffrey 35 times for 80 yards rushing. 35. That's not effective.
if you're Brock Purdy, if you're the quarterback, Brock Purdy, you cannot be in third down and long. And they were throwing the ball way too much, and they were getting behind the chains. Run the ball, stay on task, keep it in manageable 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5,
which
3rd and 4.
nobody's done all year against
where
Kansas
you can
City.
still use the play action. I'm going to get you back in here, Chris, because what do you think about the fact that San Francisco didn't run the football, or to Mars' point, they couldn't run the football? What are your thoughts on Kansas City's defense against San Francisco's run game?
Well, yeah, I just pulled this up because I wanted to look at this. They didn't effectively run it. Marv, I will say this, Lee. Marv makes a great point. I'm in knee deep in basketball season right now. We got people scoring, but you're right, Marv. They're taking 40 shots a game just to get their points, and we're losing. But McCaffrey, longest was 11 yards. And I think you said he averaged 3.9 yards per carry.
Right.
At the 30, you said 35. That's a lot. Purdy actually had a longer, more average yards, even though he didn't run it as much, of course. But I could see where Marv's coming from, Lee, because that is a big thing.
I'm about to help both of you.
But I know you just are. I just want to let you know what I'm looking at.
I'm about to help both of you because you just said that he averaged 3.9 yards a carry, correct? So again, San Francisco and Brock Purdy is about putting you on third down with manageable third downs so he can use the middle of the field. The key to Kansas City's defense on Sunday in the second half was they made Purdy throw the ball outside the numbers. Outside the numbers, the guy got a pea shooter. He can't complete balls outside the numbers. He's a middle of the field thrower of the football. Stay in down and distance so that you can have manageable third down.
So when are we going to talk?
Honest. So that's what
when are we going to bring up the fact? When are we going to bring up the fact that Kittle was injured? When are we going to bring up the fact that Debo once again injured in the playoff? When we gonna bring up the fact that Greenlaw tore an Achilles at half? Debo can't get, even when Debo healthy, he can't get open. Let's not act like Debo's an elite wide receiver. He's not. Purdy hit him right in the numbers in the middle of the field that could have extended a drive that could have changed his whole game, right? So, and he put it right in the breadbasket, and Debo dropped it. Let's stop acting like Debo is an elite wide receiver. He's not. Debo is an elite athlete. He is not a route runner, and he's not a wide receiver. They got one on that team, and that's IU. And Snead locked him up all game, which is what he's done to everybody all year. So how can you play action when you got receivers that you're not scared of? I'm not scared of Debo in the receiving game. I'm not scared of him. He can't beat my corner.
We have a Chiefs fan right here that just commented. Thank you, Jesus. That it makes sense to run the ball more. He was scared of the run. It's not about the number. It's about staying on catch. Y'all see the comment. It made sense to run the ball with Offensive Player of the Year and hope for big play. That's the key. That's the essence to what San Francisco does. You guys forget about the number of carries. Put another back in there and get more carries if you didn't want to beat McCaffrey up, but I'm telling you, they have to stay on task. I want to ask you guys this. In the overtime, should San Francisco had went for it on fourth down instead of kicking the field goal? Again, that to me, that was another tactical mistake by San Francisco. They should have went for it on fourth down and not kick because of this.
So let me bring something up real quick.
Go ahead,
Lee. Go ahead, Finn. No, let me bring something up real quick. San Francisco gave the ball to Kansas City at the end of the fourth with a lead, and in overtime with a lead. Who lost the game for San Francisco was Wilkes, and that's another conversation for another day.
Oh my God! Give me a break. That's ridiculous, Marv. That's ridiculous. Wilkes didn't lose.
So if I give you a lead, Lee, if me and you on the team and I'm on offense, you on defense, and you my coordinator, and I give you a lead at the end of both of regulation and overtime, and I tell you to go win me a Super Bowl, and you can't, whose fault is that? That ain't my fault. That's your fault.
Look,
that's your fault for not being able to get a stop. I don't care if Kansas City was going to go for it on fourth down or not. Their defense was gassed. I don't care that Shanahan took the ball first. People making a big deal about their defense just gave up a field goal to tie the game, and they was gassed. The defense was gassed. They was done.
So Chris, do you blame Wilkes, the defensive coordinator, for the loss in the Super Bowl? I like to get a third party in here.
Now I'm gonna have to stop agreeing with Marv and go with Lee here. I don't think he did that. I think it was a tactical error not to take the ball first. I mean, not to give them the ball. I'd still go back to, did they know what in the world the rules were? Wilkes, I mean, the defense. If you look at defense dominant, defense had a great year. And if we're going on to this Wilkes thing, I mean, this is where I think Kyle Shanahan, I mean, I was surprised. Again, here's my thing. You got to bring it was a tough loss. You got to bring the locker room together. All of a sudden, now we're placing blame. And the big thing now with Wilkes and Shanahan is like, we had disagreements all year, so I can't, I couldn't deal with them. He's out. But if you want to go look at the stats, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
And we just talked about.
Are we watching two different teams here? Did we watch them get gashed against Detroit? Did we watch them get gashed against? I mean, I don't understand what we're talking about here. Y'all talking about numbers. I'm talking about what I see on the football field. Was he not awful in the playoffs for San Francisco? And hold on, one before you go, Lee. Remember the biggest play in the Super Bowl when San Francisco was on defense and Mahomes threw the out to Skandrick. He caught it, and it was like second and 25, I think. He caught it and went backwards with it, lost like 10 yards, right? Yep. The next play, what did Wilkes get in defensively? Instead of pressing and attacking Kansas City, he played a damn prevent and had 4 defensive backs at the first down marker on 2nd and 25. Like, nobody makes that call in that. Like, you were scared of Mahomes. You were scared of Mahomes. That defense told me it was just like when I played basketball and we sat in pregame and we had everything up on players of what they do well, all their tendencies, to have you scared of who they are, right? Have you scared to go out and compete. That's what that defense told me. He was that scared of Patrick Mahomes and not to lose a Super Bowl. And he gave up 16 yards to make it manageable on that third down, which extended the drive to keep it. Because we know what Mahomes was going to do. You had a chance to kill him right there. You had a chance to take him out, and he didn't. He played scared, which he did all playoffs.
You gave up in regulation, Marv. You gave up, 19 points? You held San Francisco to 19 points. You dominated. His defense dominated the game all game long. And even though you gave up, it was 3rd and 9. You still players execute. San Francisco players did not execute during the Super Bowl in the second half and the overtime. I don't blame Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes has led the 49ers. They had the best defense under Steve Wilkes this year, better than DeMeco Ryans, better than Robert Saleh. Their defense over the entire year. Yeah, that was some lapses, game here and game there. They still won the games, but he did a phenomenal job. That was personalities, to Chris's point. That was personalities. And hey, sometimes star players don't want to be coached hard. That's okay. But let's transition a bit, because our next topic is going to be about Kyle Shanahan and what does this loss mean for us. And I love the comments. Please make comments in the chat, y'all, because I have people here that keep trying to tell me that running the football, if you run the football, you're always going to win. And that's Kyle Shanahan's MO, Marv. He's been in 3 Super Bowls. 3 Super Bowls. He's had a lead of 10 points or more in 3 Super Bowls. And you know what? He lost all 3. He lost all 3. And the common denominator in all 3 of them was he went away from running the football, which is a core of what his offensive philosophy is in the second half, and you got walked down. So tell me what you think about this. I'm going to go to you first, Marvin, then we'll get with Chris in here. What does the loss mean for Kyle Shanahan's legacy?
I mean, no more than it means for Andy Reid, as much as when he lost in the Super Bowl. I mean, no more than John Harbaugh. I mean, I don't understand the question. I mean, he's lost Super Bowl. Who would you take over Kyle Shanahan besides Andy Reid right now as a coach? Who?
Oh, there's a lot of coaches that I take over Kyle Shanahan. I like one.
Name me one.
I like McVay. I like what McVay does as a coach. I like Harbaugh as a coach. I like John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh, both Harbaughs.
Okay. And whose tree did McVay come from? We all know where
It
he
doesn't matter
came
who
from.
the tree
Okay, he
is.
got
The
a
tree
Super
doesn't
Bowl.
matter. We chop down trees all the time.
Let's not act like Shanahan now all of a sudden because he didn't finish some Super Bowls. You just got done saying it's up to the players to execute. He wasn't playing the football game. That's just what you said in the last segment. It's up to players to execute. They didn't execute. Like, I don't know who you take over Kyle Shanahan at this point.
Well,
He's taken less. He's taken less to a Super Bowl than most coaches would ever do. He had Matt Ryan, who was offensive, but we all know who Matt Ryan is. He took Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl and Brock Purdy. Like, can we be real here?
Oh, yeah,
like,
well,
okay,
you're making my point. You got these quarterbacks that can't do anything.
Most coaches couldn't even get teams to this point. So let's not stop acting like he don't know how to coach football.
Okay, Chris, who is the most talented football team in the NFL? Tell me who's the most talented. Give me the top 2-3 talented football teams in the NFL.
Well, and I'll give you the one. I mean, for me, going in being an NFC guy, I mean, the 49ers were.
There you go.
Dallas wasn't the most talented team this year?
No, we couldn't beat the 49ers.
Let me say this. We're up there. Dallas is up there.
We got to stop this conversation there. We can't even have a conversation.
Most talented team. Go ahead, Chris. Being honest, I mean, I love my Cowboys, but I can't be a homer every day. But I definitely the 49ers, to me, I honestly thought they were going to go in and dominate the game. But I don't know. I mean, I listen to what Lee says about the coaches that come in. I don't know who else you get. You know, the guys getting ready to have a 30 for 30. You see that new Buffalo Bills 30 for 30 that's on Netflix or something. But I mean, I think the expectations are tough. Like Samar, we talk about, me being a Cowboys fan. Mike McCarthy, great seasons, can't get it done in the playoffs. Shanahan, great seasons, gets to the Super Bowl, but can't get it done. So, I mean, it's a back and forth thing. But I think, again, you got to bring the locker room together. And I just think the Wilkes thing was a hasty thing. It was so fast. I mean, that's one of the things that really bothered me. I mean, the dust hadn't even settled yet. And that was over. So that's something that, you wonder, is he ever going to win if you make decisions like that? Because they did have a great, great defense.
Yeah, you can't pin that. I mean, Mark wanted to throw the shot. Now, don't get me wrong. Every defense has its struggles, but for the totality of it, they had the best. San Francisco had the best defense they've had in 10 years. So how can you? Thank you for the coming 49ers and Ravens. Thank you, Jesus. They were the best, most talented teams in the entire league. So how can you blame that? You have all the talent in the world. You have the defense, you have an offensive line, you have the offensive player of the year, and
the offensive line was terrible. Their offensive line this year was terrible. Come on, man. Just stop. Stop acting like San Francisco. Stop acting like their offensive line was dominant this year. It wasn't.
Marv, the offensive line is
dominant. And it reared its head in the most inopportune.
And Trent Williams was there. They were literally unstoppable. But the key
Trent Williams got massacred in the Super Bowl. Go back and watch the film. Don't go by the name. Go back and watch the film. Trent Williams remember when he got the 3 penalties in a row? You know why he got those? You know why he got those? Because he couldn't block them. Because he could not block that kid.
Best left tackle in the NFL. Anybody would take him. Anybody would take him.
But we talking about in one game scenarios. Their offensive line was awful in that game. They were terrible.
They did not run the football. But the question here is it a stain on Shanahan's legacy? And you telling me, Marv, you trying to get me to believe that if I, as a Super Bowl coach, have a 10-point lead in the second half of a Super Bowl and I lose, that's not a stain. And I've lost twice. Matter of fact, I've lost 3 times. One as an offensive coordinator, 2 as Super Bowl. He cannot finish the game. Let's be honest about that. He cannot finish the game. And that's a flaw in his play calling and how he looks at the game. And I will give you this before I let you go, Marv. That is a flaw with who's playing quarterback for you. And that's what I've been saying all along. Who's
right, but you don't say, y'all don't say that about Dak Prescott. You don't say that about Lamar Jackson. You don't say that about all the other quarterbacks that we could say that about that don't get it done in big moments. He played better than Lamar Jackson did. He played better than Dak Prescott did in big moments. So I mean, if
Why
we're
are
gonna
you
say that about,
always trying to draw Dak
if we don't,
Prescott into the conversation? We're not talking
because he
about Dak
didn't,
Prescott.
because but you talking about like the kid wasn't the best player on the field for San Francisco and gave them an opportunity to win the game. He gave them back the ball with the lead in two instances. Like, let's stop acting like the kid didn't rise to the moment. Okay, he's not
He
Patrick
didn't.
Mahomes.
I don't care what
Nobody
you say.
is. Nobody is.
Look. Shanahan he scripts the game very, very well. His first 15 plays, when you look at the game, Chris, and you see how San Francisco came out and they dominated that game early, he scripts the beginning of the game very, very well. Then Spagnuolo went in and he adjusted to what he was doing in the game. That's why you had 3 straight 3-and-outs in the second half, and they didn't score touchdowns in the second half because they adjusted. The problem is, the readjustment by Shanahan was not there. They did not score, and they did not move the ball. Now, they have excellent talent. They're going to move the ball and score a field goal here and a field goal there. But the mastermind of what we think Shanahan is, the shine is off in the second half, and we have 3 examples of it happening on the biggest stage possible. And I'm not saying Shanahan is not a great coach. He came up small in the biggest games that he had to coach in, Marv. That's a fact. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I mean, you talk about in-game adjustments. I just want you guys to all go back because I know we had the ability to watch the game on that last play when San Francisco had a chance to hit Jennings in the flat, right? He changed the play at the line of scrimmage. He brought McCaffrey in motion to chip on the edge because that's where they have been getting most of the pressure all night. And Chris Jones absolutely mutilated his man at the line of scrimmage and got in under 2 seconds and made Purdy have to get rid of the ball before the play was wide. He had not only did he had Ayuk wide open, he had Kittle wide open, and he had the other one running in the back of the end zone wide, but he didn't have time to get it off because you just said San Francisco had one of the best lines in the NFL and they couldn't block nobody all night. So don't act like he didn't make the adjustment. Don't act like he did make the adjustment. But it's up to 11 guys on the football field.
I expect my quarterback to make those plays, Marv. Chris, I expect my quarterback to make plays. He didn't make the play.
You can't make a play from your back. You can't make a play
in his face. Make a play, man.
Now y'all just being kind of crazy about this to act like any quarterback could have made that play.
Well, is it a stage?
There's 2 quarterbacks that can make that play. 2.
Who are they?
Mahomes and Allen. Them the only 2 that could have made that play. And maybe
Allen
Burrow when he was healthy.
Allen did the same thing in the game against when Buffalo played. He did the same thing. Chris Jones rushed him in the face, and he didn't know how to slide
I guess Kansas City has a pretty good defense, huh?
They do, but San Francisco lost.
If they keep putting people in these situations.
Chris, Marv don't answer the question, so I'm going to ask you to answer. Chris.
Sure. He's got a stain, but I still would take him over any other coach in the NFL besides Andy Reid.
Is it a stain, Chris? Because Marv don't want to help me here. Is it a stain on Kyle Shanahan's legacy, Chris?
Well, it is a stain because we're talking about it, and if you go look on news articles, there's a whole bunch of things on it. It is a stain. He can't win the big one, and that's the stigmatism he doesn't want to have. And I know Mar brought up quarterbacks, but again, I mean, do we think a Dan Marino, who had an amazing career in the Hall of Fame, never won? I mean, that was the thing on Peyton and John Elway as well. I mean, it was a stain until they won it. If Kyle wins one, then yeah, we probably have a different conversation. But at this point, I will say it's a stain. Even though there are points I agree with both of you on, but it is a stain.
Mark, what was your ultimate answer before we move on? Is it a stain or not? You said a lot of stuff. Trying to help out. Is it a stain?
No, sure, you have to win the big game. Of course, because he's the head coach, right? I mean, there's no doubt that it's a stain, but I'm still not taking any other coach besides Andy Reid over him.
Well, if you want a coach that's going to win the Super Bowl, you probably should. I mean, because he's proven in 3 tries he can't get it done at the Super Bowl. Let's be honest. I like Kyle Shanahan. I think he's an excellent script. He scripts the games very, very well. I love, and I was during the game, it was like, man, this guy really can script the game. But it's about in-game adjustments, and certainly Kansas City made better in-game adjustments than the 49ers did. So, and that caused the loss. And then again, everybody wants to say Purdy is this, but I always have to be honest. The book on Purdy is there. and even one of the D-backs for Kansas City, I think McDuffie said this. He said, once we learned and adjusted to taking away the in routes and the slants for San Francisco, they had them because they knew Purdy can throw the ball on the outside of the field.
Did you before we move along? Have we ever thought about the fact that they run those is because they only have one number one receiver who can actually get open? I mean,
you don't like Debo. You don't like Debo.
He's not a wide receiver, and we try to act like he's somebody who's a proficient route runner. He's not. He never be. He's just not.
He's a game breaker. That's what we need. That's what they need. He's not a great route runner. Ayuk would run circles around him as far as a route runner. But Debo is a playmaker, Marv. You can't say that Debo is not a playmaker.
We're not talking about. We're talking about an ability to get open at the line of scrimmage against the two best DBs in the NFL, which he was not allowed to do. Kittle had to stay back in 6-man protection because the offensive line was trash and they could not protect.
Kittle was trash in the Super Bowl. Let's be honest. Kittle was trash.
He was injured. He had a separated shoulder. He had a separated shoulder. I mean, we couldn't even get out of bed with a separated shoulder. So
okay, let's move on. But I love this topic. We're gonna get back to that. We'll be discussing Kyle Shanahan more and more as we move down the line. Look, Eric Bieniemy. The Redskins, the Commanders didn't renew his contract. He signed a 2-year deal last year, and they didn't renew his contract. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury as their new offensive coordinator. And it got me to thinking, Marvin, I certainly want to get your opinion on this, Marv. Is Eric Bieniemy the NFL version of Mark Jackson in the NBA? As we know, Mark Jackson started with the Golden State Warriors. He had Clay, he had Draymond, he had Curry, had some internal strife with ownership. They fired him. We know what Steve Kerr has done now and with the championships that he's won. But Mark Jackson can't get a job, and it seems like Eric Bieniemy can't get a job. So is Eric Bieniemy the Mark Jackson of the NFL?
I don't know. I think it's two different things here. I mean, Mark Jackson not even getting interviews. So, he's not even getting in a position to interview for a head coaching job. So I think he might have had like 2 since he's been fired. So, I think it's a different scenario. Eric Bieniemy's had 17. Like, he's had 17 interviews. Like, that's just facts. Maybe he's a poor interviewer. Maybe they don't see him as a leader of a franchise. But, there's also something else that most people don't talk about. Like, Andy Reid does call his own plays. There was one instance in 2017 where he gave up play calling rights, for half of the season with Bieniemy and Matt Nagy, I think it was. But since then, they basically hold a play chart. Andy Reid is the play caller, and everybody knows that it's a well-known fact. The reason why he left Kansas City was to prove that he was an offensive coordinator. Like, let's just be real. That's why he left. And what we got, no matter who he had at quarterback, right? We gonna say it shouldn't matter. It's about how you script and how you coach, right? So he had Sam Howell, and Washington ended up being Washington with Eric Bieniemy. The same thing that we've always seen, the same product that we've always seen. And Kansas City was still Kansas City without him as well, winning the Super Bowl. So what does that really say? I mean, is he the guy that we think he is? Was he the mastermind behind Kansas City? Everybody in the NFL knows that that's not true. He's had 17 interviews, and especially, and I'm off. I normally don't talk like this, but especially in an era when the NFL is at least making a cognizant effort of hiring minority candidates in front offices and from a head coach. Because we've never seen the amount of hires that we've had over the last few years. So they've made a concerted effort to address that, and he still hadn't gotten a job. Maybe we need to be saying something else here.
Okay. Chris, what are your thoughts on Eric Bieniemy? Is he the NFL version of Mark Jackson in the NBA?
The 2 points Marv made, I wanted to touch on. Mar, the first thing that came to my head when we were discussing these topics in our pre-production was interviewing. Is he like something's got to be going on in there that they're not trusting? Like, this is the guy to lead our team. What, 2 Super Bowls, 7 or AFC West titles. You make a great point about Andy Reid. We've talked about him all day today. Mostly calling the plays, but there's something going on. And Sam Howell. This is what, being in Virginia Beach area, the 757, Taylor Heineke was a superstar at Old Dominion right here down the road. Walter Payton Award winner in the FCS, and they move to, to the big league and led his team. And, he did well. They Rivera benched him. Howell was the second coming. He was going to be a great quarterback this year, and he didn't do anything with them. And I think that was one of the things too, because they were really had high hopes for Sam Howell this year. Heineke goes on and goes to Atlanta. I mean, he's a great experienced backup. I don't know if he's a starter, but my point was, to me, Heineke was doing better than what Howell did this year. And as you said, Washington became the same, or was the same Washington as always. So, yes, I mean, at this point, I know the Seahawks were looking for somebody, but he's not going to be the one, or is not the one. And then, I mean, if you read some things out there, they're talking about him having to sit out. No one's going to hire him. So very interesting on that. So I think it's a little bit worse than Mark Jackson, to be honest with you.
Wow. Those are strong comments. Let me come in here and clean this thing up for our viewers, because I just can't believe it. A couple of names I want to throw out at you, Marv. Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson. What do they have in common? Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson. They were both the offensive coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid, and they got head coaching jobs. Right? So 2-time Super Bowl champion, 5 AFC championship games, and he can't get a head coaching job. Chris, to your point, when we talk about Sam Howell led the NFL in passing yards the first half of the season. So obviously something was going right for the Redskins for him to be the leading passer in the league for the first half of the season. Now, ultimately, his compensity to turn the ball over was his downfall, because he just turned the ball over too much. But Washington's offense was humming under Sam Howell the first half of the season. The key for me, and one of the reasons that I think Bieniemy's not getting jobs, is he's very tough and he's very stringent. And that's why he's a polar opposite of Andy Reid in Kansas City, and that's why Kansas City loves Bieniemy, because Bieniemy gets in the players' ass. He coaches them hard. The same thing, you remember when Rivera said the players came to him in the offseason at the beginning of the year, and he said the players were saying, well, we're only in the first week and in shorts, and he's coaching us hard. So when you put a stigma like that on a coach, I think Ron Rivera did him a tremendous disservice by saying that in the public. And when you do those type of things, you put a stigma on a coach that is hard when other owners and GMs interview him. That was a disservice. As far as calling the plays, Marv, Bieniemy calls some plays for Kansas City, and it's been proven, and Andy Reid has said as much, that he calls plays. This is, to me, is very similar to Mark Jackson. Yeah, I agree. Mark Jackson should have been a coach a long time ago in the NBA. He's a great coach. He's a great analyst. He knows basketball, but there's a stigma on him. There's a book on him, a sort of a blackballing on him, and similar to Eric Bieniemy. So I do think he's the same version. I think they're really in the same boat, because there's a stigma on EB. Why does Andy Reid invite him back to speak to the team and mesh with the team if he doesn't have something great? And what people and GMs and owners around the league are not saying, that's greatness. And they're missing out on a great coach. But I'll let you guys chime back in if you have anything else you want to say. But I certainly think it's a very, very similar situation.
Couple things here. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, right? But let's go back to what Chris said. Like, they all had interviews. They all had opportunities to get hired. Bieniemy more than most, and he hasn't been hired. So let me correlate that to Mark Jackson, because I do have some a little bit of inside info on this. I had a couple friends who played for Mark Jackson, right?
All right.
And we always talked about improvising, within the game, being able to improvise and make adjustments as needed. The NBA has changed. The NFL has changed. The coaches, the tough, beat you down, I'm gonna cuss you out till you get it right era doesn't work for professional athletes anymore. And I got a friend who started to trend with Latrell Sprewell who choked somebody out because of it. You can't coach men who make more money than you in this era the same way. I mean, we can shake our heads all we want to, but I'm talking about from people who actually been in a huddle and on the sideline and actually played for somebody. It doesn't work anymore, and owners don't invest in that. It's just that is not who they're going to invest in to lead their franchise, because players are commodities, and they're the biggest commodity that these owners have. And you need to have somebody that leads them, that can relate, that can understand, that can coach in several different ways. And we know Andy Reid can. We see Andy Reid cuss people out from time to time, but he's always been known as a players coach, and he gets the most out of his players because he understands how to coach. Can't coach everybody the same. I was a person that my coach didn't yell at me because it didn't motivate me. It didn't make me better. But telling me that there was something I couldn't do, telling me somebody was better than me, finding ways to that's how you motivate guys. Everybody can't be coached the same. And the book on him is that he coaches everybody the same. And that's not good as a leader. Maybe he could do that from an offensive perspective. Maybe that was good for Travis Kelce. Maybe that was good for Mahomes because Mahomes knew he was Mahomes. He didn't care. But other guys like McCole Hardman or some of these other guys, or the Jackson kid, the Tony kid that they had to put on IR and basically was getting ready to cut. Like, you can't coach everybody the same. And that's the MO on him. So, we'll see. But there's something there. You don't get 17 interviews and don't get hired. You got to take some fault in that.
Yeah. Chris, you have a follow-up?
Just real quickly, we've been hiring managers for years, and Marv, I go back to what Marv just said. There's something going on in the interview, and people are thinking he's not the right fit. I mean, we can look at what his offenses have done, but there's something going on. I mean, all of a sudden Dan Quinn goes in there and gets the Washington job, even though he was not the first pick. You've got guys that go in and, they think they're the right fit. And I've been following that. I don't like Washington at all, but I want to see what they're thinking about Dan Quinn. And for some reason, there's something going on in the process that he's not able to convince them. That's the big thing. You got to convince them, hey, I'm the guy to lead your team. And right now it's not happening.
I'm going to leave you guys with this. You look at the past winners of the Super Bowls, right? Look at the past winners. Andy Reid has had Eric Bieniemy there with him all throughout that tenure. And Eric Bieniemy comes back and he gives a motivational speech to the team, and they go out and win the Super Bowl, right? You look at Todd Bowles, old school coach that wins Super Bowls. The question I would pose to the audience and anybody is the teams that are winning Super Bowls have the old school tough coaches that get in people's asses and make sure that they play. They win the Super Bowl. Those are the ones that are winning. These coaches that are hiring these Rudy Poot, nice guys, they're finishing last. Dan Campbell comes to mind as well. He's an old school coach. Those guys, the NBA Marv, the Malone guy for Denver, will cuss you out in a minute. He's an NBA champion, right? He's an NBA champion. So
yeah,
I
just can't agree with you, Lee.
I would push back that old school works. Now, you have to have a mixture. I agree with you. You can't just cuss them out every day and not give them a little love and shine, but the old school way work. Because the champions, and that's what I'm talking about, the champions of these leagues have old school coaches. The only one is Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is more of a player's coach. He's not a yellow and screamer, but the Malone kid certainly is a yellow and screamer, and he cusses and he gets in people's ass. And so
I got some inside info on that too, and I got a good friend who played for Malone in Denver, and the difference is that you can be old school. But there's a difference between being old school and then having the ability to develop relationships. Dan Campbell is a master at developing relationships with his players. So therefore, he gets the carte blanche to coach them that way. Same thing with Malone in Denver. He has very personal relationships with those players, and he knows how to push buttons. Now, you can say he's old school, but there's something to be said about guys who can build and develop relationships and then have the trust from those guys to be able to coach them that way. That's something. Go back and watch Ed Reed real quick before we move on. Go back and watch what Ed Reed said about John Harbaugh way back in the day when he first started. There's a clip where Ed Reed talks about him when it was him, Ray Lewis, and all those vets, and John Harbaugh came in trying to be old school and came in trying to say, this is how we going to do it, and if you don't like it, you get the F out. Like, go back and find that clip what Ed Reed said about John Harbaugh, and then that might make you change your mind about what you think about this old school mentality.
Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, all of them say the same thing about Bieniemy. They love him. He's a great coach. Those same relationships that you're talking about, Marv, they have it with Bieniemy. But we're going to move on. Chicago has the first pick in the draft, Chris. The first pick in the draft. There's been a lot of speculation. Caleb Williams, keep the current quarterback, Justin Fields. Chris, what do you think the Chicago Bears should do with the first pick in the NFL draft?
There's two ways to look at this, Lee and Marv. There's some leverage with that first round pick. I mean, they could trade back a little bit if they're sold on Justin Fields. Well, I don't think they're sold on it, but they could trade back, and I think they get some really good value for it. But here's the thing, Fields he's not a part. The GM and the coach they didn't bring him in. So I mean I think that's a big issue there, and I think they should keep him. I'm just going to say that because now you're looking at bringing in Caleb Williams again, good quarterback. You've got to develop him as well. My opinion is you get more value for trading back a little bit, and heck, you didn't even know you were going to have that. That comes from the Panthers. So my thing, you trade back a little bit, you get some future first rounders. I mean, who knows? There's teams out there that need quarterbacks. We talked about Washington, New England. Those are two teams that come to mind, real quick as we talk about this. You never know. You might be able to make something happen. Then you get more quality players if you can get some of these first and second round picks to trade that first round pick. So I went back and forth on it, but I think they should keep it and see what happens, see what they can get for it. I mean, I'm sorry, trade it back, keep Fields and see what they can get for it.
Okay. Marv, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you feel about these quarterbacks coming out. I personally don't think that Caleb Williams is who everybody thinks he is. I think that there's another quarterback who's better, but that's another conversation for another day. If you sold on Caleb Williams, then sure. But to me, I'm with you, Chris. I keep Justin Fields. I keep Justin Fields and continue to build that roster. When Justin Fields came back from being hurt, he showed a lot of progress. When they got Montrez Sweat in that trade, that defense became really, really good. I think they won 5 of their last 7. There's something to build on there. I don't think Justin Fields is a flop. I think that he has to be in the right system, and that's what you do as a coach, right? Create a system that works for the talent that you have rather than run your system and tell your players to adjust to it. So I think there's a lot there with Justin Fields, and I think that they showed a lot of progress, and I'm just not sold on Williams. I think they're going to take Williams first. I think that's just what they're going to do because of the pressure, but I think it's a mistake. I would keep Fields.
You don't believe Caleb Williams is generational talent, Mark?
No, absolutely not. Because he flicks a ball sidearm. Now he's Patrick Mahomes. Like I'm looking at like I watched him in college, and I've never seen him win I never saw him really win a big game. I saw him put up a lot of points at USC, but everybody put up a lot of points in the Pac-12. But I also saw him lose to Oregon. I saw him lose to Utah. I saw him lose to Washington. I saw him lose to UCLA. I saw him lose to Notre Dame. I never saw him win a big game at Oklahoma. I never saw him win a big game at USC. That matters to me. Now, when you're talking about Mahomes and Allen when they came out of Texas Tech and Wyoming, they were never in big games. So we didn't really have anything to compare it to, right? But when you're talking about what Mahomes is right now, and when he came out of college and we're talking about Caleb Williams, I don't think it's even close. Like, I don't like his demeanor. I don't like his leadership. I don't think that he's made for Chicago. And Lee and Chris, y'all know how that fan base is. Chicago's a different breed. Like, I just think it's a bad fit. But I think they're going to draft him, but I'm not sold on him. I like the kid out of LSU better than anybody.
Okay.
I certainly don't think Drake May is the third best quarterback in this draft, but that, like I said, that's another conversation for another day.
Chris, is Caleb Williams a generational talent?
No.
Oh wow.
No.
Wow.
I have to agree with Marv on this. I mean, he's a good quarterback. I mean, there's time. I was disappointed in him in some games, and I'm going to tell you this: if you look, let's go back to Fields real quickly, and I know you want to chime in on this.
Go ahead.
The one thing he has the support of his teammates, and Marv had
That's
talked
right.
about his growth, especially coming back from the injury, and I think that's one of the things that you need to have is support of that locker room. I mean, there are other quarterbacks out there that if they did trade down and they wanted to bring somebody in, they could. I just don't think you give up Fields and go for Caleb Williams at this point. That's just my opinion.
Okay, and that's a great point, Chris. Before you go, Lee, the fans in Chicago love Fields. Let's not forget that. A lot of fans in Chicago love him, and he does. He got the support of that locker room, and that matters in this league. And we both know that matters when you got somebody behind that center that you actually do believe in, that you want to play for.
Yeah. Fans are like they're sunshine patriots, I call them. As soon as they start winning, they're gonna love Caleb Williams too. That's not something I even care about. But let me say this: you guys kill me on this. Caleb Williams is a bad boy. And what is USC's coach name? It slips my mind right now.
Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley. When has Lincoln Riley won a big game, Amar, Chris? He's never won a big game. So a lot of that is his coaching philosophy. He's never won a big game. He didn't win anything in Oklahoma. He was in the playoffs and got blew out every time. He hadn't won a big game. He can't win a big game if they paid you to. So that's more on him. I saw probably every one of Caleb Williams' games. I'm a West Coast University of Washington guy, and I watch it. The guy's phenomenal. The guy's phenomenal. He can make every throw. He can run. He scrambles, and he is Mahomes-esque. Now, I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but he does have some of the qualities that Patrick Mahomes has. So I think he's going to be a bad man. And the quarterback that everybody's sleeping on really is Michael Penix because of the knees, Marv. That's the quarterback. Yeah. If you're looking at a thrower of the football, of all of those quarterbacks in there, he's the best one. But getting back to that number one pick, I agree with you guys, not because of what you're saying about Caleb Williams, but I do think they should keep Justin Fields, trade that pick, get Marvin Harrison or Roma Doomsday as a receiver to go along with the Moore kid that they have now. Use that 9th pick on rebuilding that offensive line. They made some trades last year on the defensive side. So I think what you guys are saying, I agree with you on keeping trading the pick and keeping Fields. But we'll get into this a little later. The Caleb Williams hate, I don't get, man. I mean, that's nothing not to like about
it's not hate. It's just that we see this every year. There's been 16 quarterbacks drafted first since 2000. 8 or 9 have been busts.
That's true.
I've seen this story before, man. I've seen these generational can't miss talents before, and there's just nothing. I mean, yeah, he can make every throw, but I've never seen him in a moment where he just was. I was like, okay. He's him, right? That's what they say. I hadn't seen him in a moment where it just resonated to me that he was that dude. Just never.
That dude's a bad man, and whoever get him, they got to start. Caleb Williams is a real deal. Okay, Mark, NBA scoring. I want to gloss over this. NBA scoring is out of control. It's out of control. And you're my basketball guy, man. And 60, 70-point games by supposed stars just every night has me clamoring for the old school. I want a Rick Mahorn knocking somebody out the air type of deal, right? So talk to me about the scoring in the NBA. Is it good or bad for the league?
I mean, I guess it's good for the league, but I think it's bad for people like us. Like, my era was just different. So it's hard for me to watch an NBA game these days, man, because it is just so cupcake. The freedom of movement. You can't stand nobody up coming through the lane. The picks. The picks are so they're not textbook anymore. I mean, guys got their arms out, they flail and they move. And if you just cleaned up some of the action off the pick and roll in this game, you probably reduce the scoring by 10, 12 points a game. And actually call the game to the letter of the rule. But I mean, it's good for the league because most casual fans like to see the cross and the in and out and the step back and all the things that we see. So from an entertainment standpoint, which is what this is, I mean, it's good for the league, but I don't like it. It's hard for me to watch a game now because you can't put hands on guys. You can't dictate defensively. You can't even win anymore in this league. Like you just can't. So the guys are too good. They're the best scorers in the world. And when you can't do anything to dictate how you want them to play offensively, it's a lose-lose. So it's good for the league, but I can't stand watching it.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think, Marv's saying it is good for the league. I mean, you have the high scoring, but let me this is what I do for a living, and I'm about to leave in a few to go do it right now. It's statting a basketball game. But let's look at something. I pulled it up because I wanted to make sure I had this. Offensive rebounds this year over last year are up 28%. But then players shooting the ball and getting their own offensive rebound are up 27%, and then they're making those baskets. So that's an interesting stat. Not saying that's always contributing to it, but I wanted to pull that up. And also, you get the little shuffle step a little bit more than you did back in the old days.
Right.
And a lot of the refs, they did a thing looking at it. A lot of the refs are calling the fouls, but man, that continuation's a lot longer. But I think that's why I'm more. I like it. Again, I'm a Virginia. I'm a UVA fan and everything as well. Being a Virginian, I love the low scoring defensive games. But as Mar said, the casual person, I mean, you see these high scores. Even when the Lakers, it was a couple of weeks ago, they didn't have, was it AD and LeBron weren't even in? They were putting up 123, some of their players. So good for it, probably. But I just wanted to kind of throw out there why I think some of that's increasing. And it's just becoming an offensive league.
Absolutely. No, Chris, those were great stats because you know what those stats tell me is similar to what Marv said on the top. The freedom of movement is there. The freedom of movement, getting offensive rebounds, getting second chance shots, and so that to me, look, I love scoring. I love to see it. But these guys coming in, I mean, we had, I think 2 weeks ago, Marv, we had 70, 60, and a 70-point game night after night after night. I just, you want to see some defense, and I enjoy scoring just as much as anybody else. But I agree with both of you guys that I think it's a bad look for the game overall, but a great look for the NBA because people want to see scoring, and that's what, like you said, Marv, the casual fan, they just want to see scoring and be awed by that and get drunk. So that's the two things they want to do.
Hey, but before we head out of here, shout out to some of my boys on here that's watching. I told y'all Doc Rivers won the answer in Milwaukee. We're gonna probably talk about that later. But I just had to give a quick shout out. I told y'all Doc Rivers was Fugazi. I told you he was washed, and now you see it in Milwaukee. I just had to say that.
Look, Doc, they need some practice time, Marvin. They haven't got it, so give Doc some love. It ain't over yet. They have dropped in the East, man. They're 8 games back. Last one, we're gonna get it in real quick. We got a couple minutes. This week, Orlando retired Shaquille O'Neal's jersey, and I got to thinking. I'm like, 4 years in Orlando, Rookie of the Year, took him to the NBA championship series. Chris, was the return of Shaquille O'Neal's number warranted by the Orlando Magic with only 4 years there? And some great success, but was it warranted? Do we just now retire the numbers for anyone that had a good few seasons at your franchise?
Yeah, I mean, this Scotty Styles, retire his number. I mean, it's.
Nick Anderson.
I'm with you. I mean, 4 years. I really think the jersey's retired because of Shaq's success in Miami and LA, and now on TNT. 4 years. Yes, he took him. He had a great start to his career, but as you guys know, and go watch some of those Laker documentaries, he was ready to go. He bolted. The Orlando could have kept him, but he was gone. He was out to LA.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. But my take is, and I'll keep it short for me, it was retired because of his success as he's had later on in his career. And those two teams have already retired his jerseys. So Orlando came back. Now, I did read a thing. The fans, a lot of people, there's some guys that flew in from Denver, Utah, they wanted to be a part of it. So I think some of the fans were excited about it. But again, it's Shaq. I mean, they're excited about Shaq, which goes to my point. It doesn't matter what team he was on, it was Shaq. And today he and Barkley are a dynamic duo on TNT, so you see him all the time.
Yes or no, Chris? Should they retire?
Oh no, I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Mark, what you have to say?
Yeah, I'm with Chris. No, they shouldn't have, but I get why they did. I mean, he's philanthropic. He's still in Orlando. You know, he had great 4 years. Yeah, I think he averaged 27. Maybe I think he had shot 58% from the field, 12 rebounds. You know, they got demolished by Chicago. We all know that. And then he got swept by the Dream, which it is what it is. So yeah, I get why they did it. He should not have had it retired just based on the years played and kind of what he did, but if that's the case, he might as well go in and retire Dwight Howard as well. You know, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year in Orlando. You know, he led him to a finals. He did win a game in the final. So we might as well go and get Dwight Howard's jersey up there too, if that's what we're doing.
And Marv,
Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, what's the standard now? I agree with
Right,
Marv on
right.
that. Like the standard now that they've set.
Yeah, because Dwight Howard is the greatest Orlando Magic.
Yep.
Yep. Let's be honest about that. When you look at the success of the Orlando Magic, it's Dwight Howard and what he did there. But I do think retiring Shaquille O'Neal brought Orlando's franchise on the map. You know, Rookie of the Year, turned down about 27-12, and I think he averaged 3 blocks. They won 22 playoff games, 95, 96, and from 97 through 2008, they only won 13. So his legacy there, I think, warrants the retirement of the jersey. Now, I'm not one of these people that say, okay, you played 3 or 4 years there, you retire, I'm going to put statues out there. But I think his impact on the franchise from when he was there, I think warranted this retirement. And Chris, you made a great point. Then the longevity of what he did and who he is, I think it does. But Marv, to your point, Dwight Howard, Penny Hardaway, I mean, they're shoo-ins for your Ring of Honor now because they did just as much for the franchise as Shaq did, and I'm sure they'll have their jersey retired. Hey, people, we thank you all for listening to us today, commenting. Look, subscribe, ISF Productions, After the Buzzers. Guys, come on now. Tell a friend about us. Hit that subscribe button. Comment on the shows. We love it. We appreciate all of you. I'm Lee Jones. He's Marvin Orange. Also, we're here with Chris Sawyer. We'll be back on next week. Look for some shows during the week as we do our update shows during the week. This has been After the Buzzer Sports Talk Show. We'll see you next week.